Greetings, this is Griff Ruby with part 57 on my series Ecclesiology for Sedevacantists based on Dogmatic Theology, Volume 2, Christ Church by Msgr G. Van Noort. We now start the next article within the whole significant section of this book devoted to the four marks of the church, which is actually, wow, that's going to be a good, more than almost 40, it's going to be a good solid 40 pages here. So, before I get into this, though, I kind of want to point out, as we go into this, and especially in some of the other sections we get into for the next several sections here, there's going to be a lot of statistics, a lot of great big numbers. And of course, obviously, this book being from 1957, these numbers are current for that time. As for the various sects and societies described in here, obviously, some of them have grown, some of them have shrunk, some of them may be about the same. But it's an interesting snapshot of how things were in 1957. I will, of course, be trying to bring in some of the more current information. So, and I'll have to add some updates as we go, as I will explain as we go along. All right, beginning here, page 171. In this discussion, the following churches must be investigated. 1. Some ancient Eastern Christian sects far older than the Phocian schism. So there's a footnote here. Phocian schism first occurred under Photius himself in the year 867. After his deposition by Emperor Leo VI in 886, the break with Rome was temporarily mended. The permanent break occurred in 1054 under Michael Carolarius. For the causes of this schism, see Algorithm Christian Denominations. It's a book, okay. So it was one, and then there's two. There's the Phocian, which is to say the East Orthodox. 3, the Reformation churches, which is to say your standard Protestant ones. 4, the Roman Catholic Church. I'm going to consider the Catholic Church 5th, because of course there's now one additional very significant category to add to these different churches or what have you that now need to be investigated, namely the Novus Ordo Church created at Vatican II. So I'll have to kind of, even though it says for the Roman Catholic Church, I will consider the Roman Catholic Church 5th, because that's us. Okay, here we present a brief sketch of these churches. 1, a brief sketch of all Christian societies. 1, the ancient Eastern Christian sects. Here's some sources. Okay, include the following. A, the Nestorian Church. Of all the existing churches which in the course of the centuries have separated from the unity of the Catholic Church, the oldest is the Church of the Nestorians. The Nestorians separated from Rome in the year 431 after the Council of Ephesus condemned Nestorius, Patriarch of Constantinople, for a Christological heresy. Namely, Nestorius considered Christ to be two persons. So, the Nestorian Church spread widely and created a high culture. In its period of greatest flowering in the 13th century, the Catholics of the Nestorian Church had jurisdiction over 27 metropolitans, each of whom had from 6 to 12 bishops under him. Nestorianism was spread through all of Asia, numbered 230 dioceses, had millions of adherents, and created a comprehensive theological literature. The domain of the Nestorian Church stretched from Egypt to China and from Lake Baikal to Cape Comorin. So that's rather interesting how incredibly vast they were. I mean, was the Catholic Church even quite so large at that point in time? One has to wonder. In the 14th century, vast numbers of Nestorian churches were wiped out in the terrible persecutions under Tamerlane. During succeeding centuries, large numbers of the surviving Nestorian Christians returned to the Roman Catholic Church and, with papal approval, were allowed to retain many of their ancient customs. The remaining Nestorians today are found mainly in Iraq and Syria. Their patriarch is called the Catholicos of the East. A much smaller group is found in Malabar, India, under the leadership of the Metropolitan of Malabar. All told, the Nestorian Christians today number about 50,000. So that was all that was left by that time. It's amazing there's any, but oh well. B, the Monophysite Eutychian Church. The Monophysite Christians include a series of national churches which separated from the Universal Catholic Church around the 6th century. They are all called Monophysites because they all, more or less, fell into the heresy of Eutyches, condemned by the Council of Chalcedon in 451. There's a footnote here. We say more or less. For some of them, like the Armenians and the Jacobites, expressly reject any mingling of the natures in Christ, and expressly condemn Eutyches as a heretic. But they are all in error concerning the humanity of Christ by either denying it a human will, monothelitism, or at least by depriving the human nature of its own moral activity, monoergism. These heresies are, in the last analysis, simply a subtler or milder form of monophysitism. For the exact Christology of each of these monophysite churches, see Algermissen. It's another the source. Okay. So, but they have some of these monophysite churches. They include the following. Eutyches held that Christ had only one nature, a mixed nature compounded of divinity and humanity. The monophysite churches include the following. 1. The Syrian Jacobite Church. The Syrian Jacobites today are found mainly in Syria and Iraq. They number roughly 90,000 members and are under the control of the Patriarch of Antioch. 2. The Malabar Jacobite Church, Christians of Thomas the Apostle, is found today in Malabar, India. The Thomas Christians number about 363,000 and are ruled over by the Catholic coast of India. But in 1930, the Jacobite Metropolitan Ivan and his suffragan came over to the Catholic Church and thus started a strong movement for union with Rome. In 1932, Pope Pius XI erected for those converted Thomas Christian Jacobites, numbering about 35,000, the Archbishopric of Trivandrum, the suffragan see of Tiruvalla. These, together with about 68,000 Uniate Syrians and 375,000 Maronites, form the Syrio-Malankar Church. Interesting. So some of them have come over back to us. Okay. Malabar. Okay. The Armenian Church. The Armenian Christians number perhaps as many as 2,500,000, about half of whom live in the Russian Soviet republics of Armenia and Azerbaijan. Outside of Russia, groups of Armenians are found in Turkey, almost exclusively at Constantinople, Persia, Syria, Palestine, Greece, Cyprus, China, and North America. They are ruled over by several patriarchs. The principal one, known as the Catholicos of Echmizden, resides in the city of Echmizden at the foot of Mount Ararat in Russian Armenia. He bears the title Supreme Patriarch and Catholicos of all the Armenians. Wow. 4. The Coptic Church traces its origin back to one of the most venerable sees of Christendom, the Patriarchate of Alexandria. Originally, it belonged to that portion of the Universal Catholic Church planted by St. Mark. It fell into the monophysite heresy under Patriarch Dioscorus, successor to St. Cyril of Alexandria. Well, probably not a legitimate successor, or at least he couldn't have retained legitimacy once he decided to fall into the monophysite heresy. A violent champion of monophysitism, Dioscorus was deposed by the Council of Chalcedon in 451. Large numbers followed him into heresy. By the year 640, when the Arabs conquered Egypt, the Copts had become a full-blown national church. At present, the Egyptian Coptic Christians number about 1 million members and are under the rule of the Patriarch of Alexandria. 5. The Ethiopian Church, Abyssinian Copts, numbers roughly 4 million members. They are ruled by a metropolitan who lives in Addis Ababa and bears the title Abuna, our Father. Throughout the centuries, this church has always been extremely dependent on the Coptic Church. Not until as late as 1937 did any Ethiopian succeed in becoming head of the church, and he has since been excommunicated by the Coptic Synod. Wow, so there's a whole lot of interesting little bits and pieces, and it's amazing how huge some of them are after all this time. I mean, some of those are, well, taken together, those could almost be larger than ourselves, and especially in terms of active members, they probably are. Well, statistics can be scary. Well, more about that next part.